All right, let's dive right in. Today we're tackling a really fascinating question. Can we measure our true biological age? And I'm not talking about the candles on your birthday cake. We're talking about a clock that's hidden deep inside your very own cells.
So let me ask you something. Do you ever feel your age? Or maybe you feel a bit younger? Or, sometimes a little bit older? Well, it turns out that's not just a feeling. The age on your driver's license, it really doesn't tell the whole story about your health. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. Okay, so let's start with the first and probably the most important idea here. Every single one of us has two different ages, and they're both running at the same time.
On one hand, you've got your chronological age. That one's easy. It's just the number of years you've been on the planet. Can't change it. But then there's your biological age. And this is the one that scientists are so excited about. It's a measure of how well your body is actually doing, physiologically. And it's a way better predictor of your health and even your lifespan.
And here is the absolute best part, the real good news. Your biological age is flexible, it's malleable. That means the choices we make every day, what we eat, how much we move, our lifestyle, can actually speed up or slow down our internal aging process. And that is exactly why figuring out a way to measure it accurately is such a potential game changer.
So the big question is, how on earth do scientists actually measure this hidden age? Well, they use this revolutionary tool called the epigenetic clock. Now, an epigenetic clock isn't some device you wear on your wrist. It's actually a really powerful computer algorithm. What it does is it looks at these tiny chemical tags on your DNA. They're called DNA methylation. Now, these tags don't actually change your genes themselves, but they control which genes get turned on or off. And it turns out, the patterns of these tags change in a really predictable way as we get older. Here's a great way to think about it. Imagine your DNA is like a giant, sprawling light board with thousands of switches. DNA methylation, that's like the dimmer switches for every single one of those lights. They're not changing the light bulb, but they control how bright it is. And as we age, some lights get brighter, some get dimmer, and the overall pattern tells this surprisingly precise story about how old your body really is. And look, these clocks aren't just some neat party trick. They are a huge deal in aging research, and for a few key reasons. First, they are unbelievably accurate. We're talking predicting your calendar age to within just a couple of years. They're also universal. They work across all sorts of different mammals, not just us. They're versatile, so we can design them to measure different things like mortality risk. And finally, they've been tested and validated over and over again by scientists all over the world. They're the real deal.
The very first clocks that came out, you might have heard of the famous Horvath clock, were trained on just one goal: predict a person's chronological age as precisely as possible. And they are just stunningly good at this, often guessing your age in years with just a tiny, tiny margin of error. They answer the simple question, how old are you?
But of course, science didn't stop there. The next generation clocks, with names like PhenoAge and GrimAge, are even more powerful. See, they aren't just trained on calendar years. They're trained on actual health data, biomarkers, and risk factors like smoking. They go beyond asking, how old are you, to answer the much more important question, how healthy are you?
But as amazing and powerful as these clocks are, using them, well, it isn't always so simple. Trying to read time this precisely comes with its own set of challenges, and scientists are working really hard to solve them. The single most important number that these clocks spit out is something called age acceleration. It's actually a pretty simple idea. It's just the gap between the biological age the clock predicts for you and your actual age in years. If you get a positive number, it suggests you might be aging a little faster than average. A negative number, that means you're aging slower. But here's where it gets a little more complex. How you calculate that gap actually matters a lot. There are two main ways to do it. The first one is called absolute age acceleration, and it's just a simple subtraction. The second one, relative age acceleration, is a little more statistically sophisticated. It compares your age to the average trend for a whole group, which can give you a much clearer picture.
So why even bother with two different methods? Well, it's to correct for a weird statistical quirk. Turns out, the simple subtraction method can sometimes make younger people look like they're aging faster than they are, and older people look like they're aging slower. That relative method, the RAA, it adjusts for this, giving a much more accurate comparison across a whole population. That's why scientists really prefer it for big studies.
Okay, so the next big challenge is one of my personal favorites, mainly because it has such a great name: the fruit smoothie problem.
So, picture this. You take a blood sample to measure its age. That sample isn't just one thing, right? It's a mix of all different kinds of immune cells. It's a fruit smoothie. You've got your strawberries, your bananas, your blueberries, all blended together. Now, today's clocks are great at telling you the age of the whole smoothie, but what we really need to know is, are the strawberries aging faster than the blueberries? That's the challenge. Figuring that out is probably the single biggest hurdle to creating truly personalized anti-aging therapies.
And this leads us to the biggest, most profound question of all. We can see these epigenetic clocks ticking away, but what is that ticking actually doing? In other words, are these little epigenetic changes just a shadow that follows the aging process, kind of like getting gray hair? Or are they part of the engine itself? Are they actually driving the process of aging forward? Answering that question is the key to knowing if we can one day not just measure the clock, but actually turn it back.
Well, let's look at a fascinating type of clock that's getting us closer to an answer. They're called mitotic clocks, and they're designed to measure something incredibly specific: how many times the stem cells in a particular tissue have divided. They're not just measuring general wear and tear, they are counting a fundamental biological process.
And this has absolutely profound implications. Why? Well, think about it. What is cancer at its very core? It's a disease of uncontrolled cell division. And guess what? These mitotic clocks show massive age acceleration in cancerous and even precancerous tissues. This is an incredibly powerful link between a specific mechanism the clock is tracking and a major disease of aging.
So where does all this incredible technology go from here? Well, if the first decade of these clocks was about proving that they actually work, the next decade is going to be all about refining them into tools of almost unbelievable precision.
So here's the roadmap to the future. First, scientists need to create these incredibly detailed reference maps, atlases really, for every single cell type in the body. Then they can use those maps to build a hyper-specific clocks, not just for the brain, but for individual brain cells. The ultimate goal is to get this so precise that it works on a single cell.
And this brings us right back around full circle. The ultimate goal is to solve the fruit smoothie problem for good, to finally move beyond measuring the average age of a tissue and be able to say, with total confidence, how old your liver cells are, how old your neurons are, and how old your T cells are, all inside the very same person.
And that leaves us with one final thought. This science is moving from the realm of theory to reality, and it's moving fast. If this technology really does reach its full potential, if you could know the precise age of every single part of your body, and maybe, just maybe, even reverse it, would you do it? The science is absolutely incredible, but the implications are something we're all going to need to think about.